Are you ready to have your karmic underworld, your karmic skeleton closet completely emptied? Are you ready to have all of the contents dumped out onto the floor for you to look at? This is the Cosmological narrative for November 22nd, Saturday, November 23rd, Sunday. And we have a ton of aspects that are all forming in retrograde motion. We have even more retrogradation taking place in Scorpio, which is bringing information from our personal underworlds to the forefront for us to deal with. And for some reason, this information, it's not new, but it's hitting in a very different way than it was before. And we have a ton of aspects to talk about today. Let's dive in. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into the cosmological narrative. So on 22nd, the first thing that we're going to look at is we are going to look at this grand water trine being activated once again. We're going to get several more activations of this, including Mercury, Venus, the moon. We'll get some more activations of it over the next month. Now, taking place both Saturday and Sunday, we have another karmic kite forming. Oh my goodness. Is this just the year of astrological kites or what? We have clearly taken a timeline. We have diverted ourselves. We've had faith in the divine, in divine timing. And now, once again, for what seems like the 20th time in the last 6 months alone, we are being forced with a test of faith. Now on the 23rd, on Sunday, we're going to look at the Sun in the superior position sextile in Sagittarius to Pluto in Aquarius. We're going to look at Mars in Sagittarius in the superior position square to the North Node in Pisces. We're going to look at Chiron retrograde in Aries, making a quincunx to that Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, which is making up part of the grand water trine and effectively completing and taking part in this kite activation that's taking place over the weekend. And last but not least, we have the moon in Capricorn in her detriment in the superior position trine to the North Node in Pisces. So what does all this mean? What's the takeaway for this weekend? Let's dive in. So on this grand water trine, this isn't new to us. I have been calling this the divine feminine receptivity awakening. It's the high priestess awakening. It's the inner feminine in all of us, whether you're a biological man or woman, that is allowing us to connect with the divine easier. When you think about the archetype of the high priestess, her emotional lability, her emotional sensitivity, her connection with spirit and intuition is her superpower. So during a grand water trine, when we have all of this water flow into our life, clear out blocked channels, what does that water allow us to do? It allows us to connect with divinity. It allows us to enter a greater state of flow. So as a man, you might notice that you're just feeling a lot more relaxed about where your intuition is guiding you. You may feel a lot more confident that the internal gnosis that comes from your spiritual body is much more activated, much more charged. If you're a woman, you might be feeling just genuinely more feminine or having more obstacles and challenges that come up that allow you to integrate that femininity in a way that works and is applicable to you and speaks again to your own inner high priestess. It allows you to activate that inner receptive quality. And so what's interesting about this grand water trine, now that we've talked about it topically and as a whole, we're looking at Jupiter in retrograde in his exaltation in Cancer in the superior position of this trine. He's making a trine to Mercury, Dark Moon Lilith, as well as Mercury retrograde in Scorpio in Scorpio, and then we're looking at Saturn and Neptune retrograde conjunction in Pisces. So what this looks like to me, because again, all of these planets except for Lilith are in retrograde motion, but what this suggests with Lilith being the only planet in direct motion in the connection of this grand water trine is that we are being delayed and obstacled in a way that's going to allow us to help fill our cup, help connect us with the divine, help calibrate us with our soul mission, ergo Neptune and Saturn in Pisces. But it's all coming about because there's something from our karmic closet, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, that's being dumped onto the floor. And even if in the back of our minds, we know that that's been in the scorpionic area of our life and it's like unresolved issues, now it's all dumped out onto the floor and we're looking at it again and we're like, oh, there's a lot more clarity around this. And what is that clarity? That clarity is all about some sort of misdirected primal energy, which is the embodiment of Lilith. It's where we take our shame, our humiliation, and we say, I don't know what to do with this energy. I need to do something with it because that's what the human does. And then we dive into like procrastination, escapisms, addictions. That's why I don't think it's entirely terminologically correct to associate Dark Moon Lilith strictly with escapism escapisms and addictions. It's essentially the motivation of why we pursue those things, which again is on the basis of that shame and humiliation that Lilith will represent. And when she moves through Scorpio, she wants us to transmute that shame and humiliation into power, into agency. Think about it in a Plutonic or Martian derivative, because both Pluto and Mars are the co-rulers of Scorpio in modern astrology, you know, and then obviously Mars is the Chaldean ruler of Scorpio. So again, that's the grand water trine. We're being activated, and our ability to receive and be more in touch with the divine flow basically begins to make sense, because Mercury is bringing something from our personal underworlds that's like, oh shit, we forgot about that, basically. Now at the same time, we have this kite that's being activated, and this kite at the core, you know, the bottom of the kite is that grand water trine. That's why I started with the grand water trine. And this kite will occur over the weekend. Arguably, you might even be feeling the energy Friday into Monday. It could be a 4-day escapade, but it depends on how sensitive you are to energy. Definitely look for this Saturday and Sunday. Now, this kite, the spine of it is being made between Uranus retrograde in Taurus, who's been giving us divine earthquakes and shakeups to say, hey, this Taurian area of your life is not in calibrated alignment with your spiritual journey, especially as Uranus makes this separating sextile to Neptune retrograde in Pisces, which basically would have allowed us to make these jarring earthquake decisions and go with the flow easier, because it's recalibrating us with our soul's mission. Now, that trine is still in effect. It's still well within the 1-degree orb, even though it's separating. So we're still feeling that energy amongst this kite. But the energy of that kite is actually pulling between Uranus retrograde in Taurus and Dark Moon Lilith in Scorpio, who is a part of that grand water trine, interestingly enough. And again, we're not going to include really Mercury as a part of this kite, because, you know, arguably he's activating this grand water trine, but he gets to about the 5-degree orb of separation on the kite as it proceeds through the weekend. So I am kind of delineating it separately just to make the analysis of it a little bit more succinct. But essentially what this means is that we have to deal with that misdirected energy that Mercury is bringing to our attention, which is the embodiment of our Lilith sign in Scorpio. And we need to essentially confront that misdirected primalistic energy in us that we have been responding to from a place of shame and humiliation. And Uranus is saying, hey, it's basically time to get the hell over yourself. That is the simplest way to understand what Uranus is doing in this context of the kite. And that get the hell over yourself moment that Uranus is giving us, that get the hell over your, you know, your shame, your humiliation, like stand in your power and make something of it. It's all going to culminate in aligning us and calibrating us with the Taurian promise of the Taurus section of our chart. But once again, it's a karmic kite. And so what does a karmic kite metaphorically look like? A karmic kite is like we're dragging a physical kite on the ground and we're running, and then we hit a cliff. And then there's just a wall of fog. And we want to keep the kite suspended in the air, so we have to keep moving forward. And the gods are essentially on the other side of that wall of fog saying, don't worry, go ahead and jump. Like, you've already made this jump several times before, so go ahead and just do it again. Like, go ahead and prove that you are, like, on this journey and you are trusting that things are working out the way they're supposed to. And that is this Dark Moon Lilith energy. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. I think I just need to push on, but I'm not 100% sure how to push on and push through. Essentially, like I tell my clients a lot of times, the realization, the cognizance, the recognition that you are at an impasse, that you don't know what to do with the energy, that creates the mold, so to speak, that then you push the Play-Doh through, that you push the, you know, the clay through, and it comes out the other end formed, but you don't recognize that your own conscious recognition of, I don't know what to do, forces you to approach the world, your presence, and your energy in a different way, and you end up exuding yourself differently. And then that change, moving away from that shame and humiliation embodied by Lilith, basically unconsciously takes form because you're conscious of how you're misdirecting your energy. Even if you don't know what to do with it, the cognizance of it allows you to slightly tweak the direction and the energy and changes how you show up. Now on Sunday, the sun will have entered Sagittarius, and it'll be in that superior position sextile to Pluto in Aquarius, which essentially says that Pluto in Aquarius has been victimizing us in the Aquarian section of our chart, showing us how to stand in our power there. And whatever those lessons were that have taught us to stand in our power to help the collective, because that's what Pluto is doing in Aquarius. He's stripping down the buildings because he sees a storm of brewing, and that storm of brewing is our need to help other people. And he's saying the buildings that you have in place in the Aquarian section of your chart, no bueno, no good. They're not going to stand during the storm. So he wipes them out and says, quickly rebuild, quickly rebuild. I didn't do that to like destroy your life. I did it because storms are brewing and you need to be better prepared. Now the sun, when it's in Sagittarius, our embodiment becomes about the focus, like our focus of the season of Sagittarius is going to be explore our physical and tangible experiences in this life. We're leaving Scorpio where we recognize that we've needed to make all of this change to our karmic past, our skeleton closet. And as we recognize what changes need to be made, we recognize that we probably need to experience the world, experience other philosophies, and have other tangible experiences that will allow us to transmute that energy more fully, more completely. Alternatively, we might have done a lot of that work in Scorpio season, and now we're feeling a little bit more liberated. We're feeling a little bit more free. We're feeling optimistic about the future to come because we've made such deep, intense changes. And the superior position sextile suggests that Pluto has been making us victims in the Aquarian section of our chart, which will directly allow us to step into that Sagittarian expansive energy where we don't feel so bound, we don't feel so confined by agency, by authority, by figures of authority who may be imposing victimization energy on us. Now, at that same time, Mars in the superior position square in Sagittarius will square the North Node in Pisces, which basically says that our drive, our willpower, and our impetus to literally get out there and have those experiences will come into conflict with our need to surrender. This essentially feels like, again, between the Sun and Mars in Sagittarius, we are like, get me the hell out of this house. But then Spirit, the creator, the gods are like, but it's storming out and there's nowhere to go. So you just have to recognize that even though you want to get out of the house and like go have those experiences, maybe the experiences that you need to have that will increase your tangible philosophical experience of life are actually in the confines of surrender, in the confines of recognizing that like you can't always move forward. Sometimes you have to like build the bridge a couple steps ahead of you before you can continue to walk on said bridge. Now, at that same time, remember, Mercury in retrograde in Scorpio is activating part of that grand water trine. So it's bringing something to the surface that's allowing us to be in receptive energy. And what is that thing that Mercury is bringing to the surface? Well, big surprise to no one. It is our childhood wound, because then on Sunday, Mercury in the retrograde position in Scorpio makes that quincux, that void point, that pause, that I don't know what the hell to do with this energy connection with our childhood wound, Chiron in Aries in retrograde motion, which is all about our childhood wound of expressing ourselves individually and expressing ourselves as a path maker, as an innovator, as a prophet in whatever area of our life Aries is. And that's the lens of our life that childhood wound is going to emanate through. And the Mercury in retrograde in Scorpio is bringing us a reminder that we don't have to live with that wound. We can do something with it. Now, do we know exactly what to do with it? No. The quincux says we're going to sit there and we're going to be like, what now? But that's entirely the energy. As I said earlier in the video, often the awareness, the cognizance of this energy, of not knowing how to move forward, of recognizing that this is a shame, a humiliation, or this is a fear, a childhood wound, that cognizance, that light bulb, then shapes how you project your energy in the world. And give it a week, and suddenly you're standing in a different presence and different energy than you were before, simply because you sat in a void point of not knowing what to do with that energy. It literally changes the way you approach it, instead of being unconscious to it and just simply responding in some sort of emotional and volatile sense. Now, the final thing and the final bit of this story is that the moon will be in Capricorn in her detriment in the superior position sextile to the North Node in Pisces, which suggests that our need to like emotionally detach and put the work in, literally Capricornian, put the work in, even though like we don't really want to, is basically how this feels to me. It's going to help us grow into this spiritual connection. It's going to help us grow into a further calibrated alignment with our spiritual mission. So over this weekend, it's like we have all of these karmic skeletons that are coming from our personal underworlds that need to be resolved, but there might not be like an immediate resolution. Perhaps in this situation, the resolution is simply acknowledging that they exist, that they're there. And by acknowledging that they exist and that they're there, we then cultivate a different sense of presence in our projected energy, and we begin to very slowly, very methodically, very strategically show up in a different energy in our world, and then begin to physically change our manifest environment, because our own internal belief system and recognition and cognizance of our own internal patterns dictates our manifest reality and how we react to situations as they present, as obstacles, as challenges, as opportunities for growth and forward momentum. Now, if you enjoy these astrological and spiritual narratives, I encourage you to check out my weekly astrological and divination-based workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. I hold it every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, rain or shine. It's limited to 10 seats per week. It's completely free. We get together. It's a space for spiritual communion, and we review the last week's transits, the following week's transits, and I teach you how to delineate where these are taking place in your spiritual journey. If you're interested in booking a reading with me, you can book a reading with me on Instagram, TikTok, or the link tree in my bio, where I have menus available for all three. And if you are in a situation of financial hardship or economic hardship, do not fret. I have special pricing available for you. Please shoot me a DM. Let me know what's going on. Let me know your situation. We'll coordinate. We'll work something out. I assure you, I promise you. So until I see you in my readings for a DM, wow, I did that again. I haven't done that in a while. Until I see you in my DMs for a reading, not the other way around. Until I see you signed up for class every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, I will check you guys out on Monday for the Cosmological narrative for Monday and Tuesday. Y'all have a safe, productive weekend. Dig out those karmic skeletons and figure out what's holding you back in life. That is my prescription of action this weekend.